Hello everyone, welcome on back to Spot On Chess, and today we're looking at a game played between Hans Niemann with the white pieces versus Wander Lang, and it is a fascinating fight from round number 9. Hans Niemann is a very controversial figure in chess, the whole cheating scandal and whatnot. He's also a real firebrand at the chessboard, real tactical player. In today's game, he does something a bit unusual already. He's played the Roy Lopez. Typically, he's playing the Italian opening, where he puts this bishop here and it threatens that f7 square immediately. Here he goes for the Spanish. And now the reason why most people are playing the Italian these days is because of the Spanish Berlin defense, which is what we get on the board right here. Hans Niemann is not afraid to enter into this. He goes into the queenless middle game variation. There are other variations you could play, though. For instance, right here, instead of d6, you could go rook to e1. You put pressure down the e file against the black king, who's in the center of the board, and captures. Now, typically you'll see, like, let's say bishop e7, getting the shield up. And then the knight comes up, knight takes knight, rook takes, knight takes bishop. Instead of recapturing the knight, you threaten the bishop on e7. And after castles, the queen can come up. After you've captured that freebie bishop on e7, it's with check. King goes to the corner, and there's the queen coming up to h5. Now, there's some beautiful little traps here. And this is essentially the position that has been sprung that creates all these traps. Give yourself a moment or two and think about this position here. How would white seal the deal and win this game? And right here, if rook to e8, take a look at this position and wonder to yourself for a moment or two, what would be the best move for white? How would Hans Niemann win this if he was playing the white pieces in this particular position? We'll assume that you've done that, and we'll go back to the other position, g6. Now, you could just take your queen and go to h6. They're going to try and win your knight and threaten a back rank mate. Now you threaten a mate on h7, but you might be saying to yourself, well, look here, man, you just take the rook. But you've got this queen to f6, check, and mate. The g8 square is controlled by the knight. Game over. And in the other event, if the rook comes over like this, you have the beautiful checkmate with queen takes h7, king takes h7, and rook to h5, check, and mate. All right, a couple opening traps for you there. All right, anyways. In this game, we get the... Oh, let's go back. Here we go. In this game, we have the d4, and we go into the queenless middle game position, which is headed right immediately for an endgame, because you're going to play it like an endgame. It's quite dry. Black has certain trumps like the bishop pair. It's very hard little puzzle to solve when you're playing white against it. In 2000, Garry Kasparov could not solve this, and Vladimir Kramnik held him to draws in all of their games. And Kasparov was not able to break through with 1e4 and win games. And this may have contributed to him losing to a man who had been his second and who had never won an actual candidates match, Vladimir Kramnik. Bit of the old school pick your own opponent type approach. All right, and so now we've got this situation where Hans Niemann has control over the d file. The bishop has come back to e7. How to activate? Well, the knight is thinking about f4, and of course we're defending our g4 point if they take, which we'll see in a moment. We can recapture, and the pawn's protected by another pawn. Back here, this is an unusual rook move. Usually you wouldn't see this in this type of position. That knight going to f4 is a fantastic move, however. And d5 has been given. It's like Bobby Fischer used to say, you've got to give squares or take squares. Unfortunately, Niemann is taking more than he's giving here as far as a Wander Lang is concerned. And we've got the rooks connected, so white is successfully out of the opening. And if white could get a pig, not on the 7th, but on the 8th, black could be in some big trouble here. So he has to avoid the exchange. And we get into the situation where there's a clamping on the b5 square. The knight is evicted, but now the knight's going to reroute over to e4. And interestingly enough, that move is a terrible move because right here, if you win the pawn, this king c8 move is absolutely terrible. Yeah, sure, you win the pawn, but you lose in exchange. And with proper technique, the game too. All right, anyways, that explains that. And so the king moved here onto the d file to avoid any shenanigans because of the rook on the e file. That was what was going on there. And knight to g5 had been pointed out as a very interesting move. This could lead to some interesting tactics. You try to make use of your majority of pawns on the king side as the first player. And that's like also in the Spanish exchange variation. You go for this win on the pawn structure. Anyways, this wasn't elected for. The knight instead gets in the way of the bishop, which was protecting its friend, the rook on e1 here. And now f5 occurs, but actually Hans Niemann has a beautiful idea. He's going to keep control over f4. He needs that square for a piece. He doesn't want to push a pawn to it. And that's how he's going to invade with the knight. This move is a blunder. In the after-game interview, Hans Niemann mentioned rook e8 as being the move that kept black in the game. Rook d8 loses because now, after the king helps control f4, there's a knight getting to f4, and it's all over. And one final blunder sealed the deal as Wonder Liang played b5, and after a takes, it's all over. He just resigns here because if he takes, he's going to get forked. He'll have to give up the rook for the knight, and then he's just down too much material. Otherwise, he's giving up this rook for the knight by allowing it to be captured. It's all over but the shouting. So, fascinating game. We have Hans Niemann bouncing back from two losses, that surprise loss at the hands of Fabiano Caruana, who seems to be a real nemesis for him at this time. Hans Niemann is a star. He is rising, and part of being a champ is how do you deal with the pressure. And he's under a lot of pressure. He puts a lot of pressure on himself, and chess, just by its very nature, creates a lot of pressure in us when we play, a lot of stress. And so it'll be fascinating to see how he goes forward with his chess game. There's a lot of supporters that want to see him do well. And I think he really spices things up and makes chess interesting, to say the least. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I wish you and yours all the best. Stay healthy, be well. Peace out.